Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm Nancy Gibson. I know some of you, I can tell from the names, but to those of you who I don't know, welcome. I'm the Director of Advising here at CXD, and I also advise students in the areas of, well, this semester it'll be legal careers. In the past, it has also been government law and policy careers, but we have another advisor joining us next week, Suzanne Watson, who's an alum, a Bowdoin alum from the class of '89, who's advised with us before in that area, and she's going to continue to do that next semester. So I hope all of you will get a chance to meet her if that's an area that you're interested in. Today, we're going to be talking about finding opportunities abroad. I'm going to go ahead and show the QR code again at the end. Let me just start this. I just have a few PowerPoint slides I wanted to show. And because you're sophomores, I'm going to be focusing today on opportunities available to undergrads rather than things that you can do once you graduate. But there really are a lot of things in that category. So if you're thinking about that for your post-graduation opportunities, do be sure to speak with an advisor in our office, particularly Meg Springer, who does a lot of advising in the area of international fellowships, and also the Office of Fellowships and Research, which is also on the first floor of Moulton Union. But Cindy Stocks and Corey Caldwell are the advisors in that office that can help with post-graduation opportunities in this area. Okay, so today, not advancing. Hold on a sec. Sorry about that. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about basically what type of opportunities exist, how do you find them, and also how do you fund your time abroad if you're looking at an opportunity that might be unpaid. And I'll take questions at the end. So if there's something that you're thinking of, you can go ahead and submit it through the chat, or we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to mention that all of this that I'm going to talk about today is really subject to public health conditions, obviously, around the world. So we can't predict right now what might happen with any in-country conditions or travel advisories or restrictions. So all of this is subject to change. So what types of opportunities have Bowdoin students engaged in the past? These are some pictures of Bowdoin students who have had summer experiences abroad. The first one is a student who was working with an organization in Amman called the Collateral Repair Project, and he was funded through a fellowship from the McKean Center. And then over here on the right, we have another student who participated in an archaeological dig abroad. On the lower left is a student who was doing scientific research at a marine science institute in Barcelona, Spain. And then in the lower right-hand corner, we have one of our peer advisors, Samara Nasser, who's a senior, who was awarded last summer a fellowship for Davis Projects for Peace. And so she set up a seaweed farming project for women in Tanzania with that project. And in addition to any of these, there are traditional internships with businesses or organizations. Some students do internships with U.S. embassies abroad. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can apply for that through the State Department. The application, though, opens very early in the academic year. So it's the applications go up in September for the next summer. So it's not possible to get an internship through that for summer 2022, but you might want to look at that for the future. And then if you are not a US citizen, you can also look for the same thing through your home country's embassies abroad. Some people teach English during the summer in different countries, leading an adventure travel trip through a company based in the US or working on an independent research project. There's funding for working on environmental justice projects or other social impact projects through international organizations or NGOs, international development work. Some people take the opportunity to study a foreign language abroad. Students also get kind of typical hospitality-based summer jobs abroad, or you might receive a fellowship from Bowdoin or an outside organization to carry out a self-designed project. So the opportunities are pretty abundant, and but oftentimes, I would say, except for very few, they require research on your part to kind of figure out where you might find those, because there's not just one resource to find those. It's going to take initiative too, because it's something that might be a little bit out of the ordinary. Perseverance, I would say, and many times it's also going to take funding in order for you to pursue it, because many of these opportunities are not funded. So we're going to discuss also today how other students have secured funding and what resources exist both at Bowdoin and outside for you to find that funding. So whether you're a US citizen dreaming of working abroad or a citizen of another country planning to work either in your home country for the summer or another country, I would say the two most important factors in your search will be your skills and your networking contacts. So we've been talking a lot about skills all week, how to identify the skills that you'll need for a specific internship or job, and how you can build those skills through your academic courses and beyond. And the second important tool is the Bowdoin Network. And I know you've also been introduced to that. But if you're looking abroad for an opportunity, you may be looking in a country where internships for college undergraduates are not the norm as they are here, or where the concept of studying the liberal arts is not that familiar. So in addition to seeking that opportunity, you may find yourself in the position of having to create a network of people abroad who know the value of a liberal arts education and what an undergraduate liberal arts intern is capable of. And so here I'm talking about things like the ability to learn, the ability to communicate with others, the ability to take a lot of complicated information and synthesize it and translate it so that others can understand it. And so where you're going to find that network beyond the Bowdoin network, there's also a Bowdoin International Alumni Network that we'll talk a little bit about, and also the NESCAC network. So that is the New England Small College Athletic Conference. It's not just composed of athletes. I was a grad, or I am a grad from a NESCAC school, and it is a very strong community. So I would strongly encourage you, if someone else hasn't already suggested it, joining, then there is a NESCAC LinkedIn group. And all of these have LinkedIn groups that you can join. But the Bowdoin International Alumni Network that I'd recommend, I'd also suggest going straight to that directory, which is on Handshake, and I'll show you how to find that later. Okay, so let's talk first about finding these opportunities and what some of the Bowdoin resources are for this. So a couple of things that are coming up that I actually wanted to mention. We don't have a logo on here, but it's mentioned down here on the left, on the box on the left-hand side. The Bowdoin Club of Asia is pretty much the work of one alum, William Bao, who for years has been facilitating making connections and connecting students with opportunities throughout Asia. Mostly in businesses and startups. And a lot of the roles have to do with marketing, operations, data analytics, investing, and other business functions. Sometimes there are a couple of other opportunities, other job functions. And he has a number of internships that last year, I think it was about 20. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, and in the past, these have been done either remotely or in person. They're open to international students as well as US citizens. So we're having we're hosting an information session virtually on February 2nd at 4:30. I don't know if it'll be recorded, but you can find the event in Handshake on the events tab. And if you're interested in finding out more, but you can't attend, I would email employer relations, email Cole Crawford, and ask him if it will be recorded. If not, you're gonna have to get a friend to get you the information. And the second organization I wanted to mention is the International Vaccine Institute, or IVI. This is an organization that's based in Seoul, but they have internships abroad and remotely in a number of different areas. You don't have to be a STEM major, although some of them are in epidemiology and public health, but they also offer internships in health economics and global affairs and communications. And there's an info session for IVI on February 3rd at 4:30. Other things I know, I'm pretty sure that are in Handshake right now, both Overland Summers and Apogee Ventures are looking for people to lead summer trips abroad. And the Wall Street Journal shared an opportunity with us for a reporting internship in Europe, and all of those are in Handshake now. Other opportunities, I mentioned the State Department before. Om Prakash is an organization that was founded by an Bowdoin alum, and it's actually an international kind of service or social impact organization. It does cost some fees to participate in, but you could apply for a CXD internship funding grant, and if you get that, you could use that money to pay some of the fees. There's also another program called BUNAC. It's BUNAC. It stands for British Universities North America Club. And there may be other organizations like that that do require a fee. For BUNAC, I think it's between $400 and $800. And that fee goes towards taking care of your work visa and authorizations, and they help you find an internship. A lot of those internships are hospitality based, but if your main goal is you want to get abroad for the summer, I think most of them, but not all, are in English speaking countries like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the fee that you pay does not cover room and board. There's also the on campus, as I mentioned before, the Fellowships Office or the Office of Study Abroad. They've funded things like study of foreign language abroad, the Bowdoin Fellowships, which allow you to travel abroad and study languages in Asia, Critical Language Scholars Program, the DOD program in Germany, which is for working or studying abroad, and also the Gilman Scholars Program, which helps students from low-income households study abroad. So those are just kind of some of the opportunities that you might find out about through Bowdoin. And then I wanted to share these websites as well, a couple of things that you'll want to know about. So first and foremost, I would suggest looking at Handshake. You can do a search by location on Handshake. Other opportunities other than the ones that I mentioned already, Search Associates places teachers at international schools around the world. There's a company called Klaviyo, which works in the ad tech space that has shared jobs with us before, located in London. We have an alum who currently has posted, I think these are jobs and not internships though, jobs with Spotify in London and Sweden. Prosec Partners, a public relations firm, is, I think, currently seeking Chinese and Singapore citizens for its global offices. And I did notice that TikTok has some positions for any software engineers in its global offices. And then Analysis Group, which is an economic consulting firm, in the past has shared jobs with us that are located in their London office. So you will see jobs on Handshake from time to time that are offered globally. Another website I wanted to mention is Going Global. This is a subscription service that we give you access to through the Handshake Resources tab. And it provides global country and major city guides most of the opportunities are in business, finance, engineering, and tech. They do have a nonprofit section, which can be kind of helpful, but I think the next two websites are really better for searches in the nonprofit sector. They have excellent country guides and global city career guides. And we're going to look more in depth at going global after I get through the slides, because that's a great place, whether you're an international student or a US citizen looking to work in other countries. And then idealist.org, if you're not familiar with that, I would definitely take a look. It's a free site. You can use it either for finding jobs, internships, and even volunteer opportunities. And remember, even if you find a volunteer opportunity, if you can get Bowdoin funding, you could turn that into an internship. There's really no difference, pretty much, as long as it meets the requirements of the internship funding program. I would say the common denominator of organizations you'll find on there is that they're all mission driven. They're not all nonprofits, but many of them are. Some of them are government agencies and NGOs. And what I like about it is that you can sort through the results that you find by, you can narrow them down by issue area. So whether you're interested in human rights or economic development, and they're really global. So it's a great way, especially if you just want to find out, what are human rights organizations that are operating in France. You can get the whole list of them, and then you might even be able to reach out to some of those organizations to find out what they offer, or if you could get funding through Bowdoin, would they be open to creating an internship? Devex.org is really a platform for the international development community, but they do have a jobs and internships database on there. So if you're interested in possibly working in an NGO or an international development, I would check out that site. And then profellow.com is a wonderful site. It's a free searchable database of fellowships and funding, really everywhere from, it includes whether you're an undergraduate all the way to kind of like a mid or higher level professional, and you can sort it accordingly depending on your experience level. Okay, so how do you pay for these opportunities? Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, so you may have heard mention during boot camp of CXD funded internships. That this program pays up to $5,000. You don't have to apply for the whole $5,000. And if you have an internship that is maybe partially funded, you can apply for the difference from CXD. These internships can be funded anywhere in the world. The application deadline is March 30th at noon. Students have used it in the past to fund unpaid work experiences in their home countries, or US citizens have used it to fund opportunities abroad and also in the US. You can also use the funding for other needs, such as covering program needs or airfare. It doesn't, and as I said, the opportunity doesn't have to be completely unfunded. The applications are going to be opened February 1st. But the one thing to remember about this is that you have to have an offer of an internship by the time you apply. So it doesn't give you a lot of time. And I would suggest, if you think you might be interested in this, you can find out more information on the website. I know there are going to be a lot of posters and other information up around campus starting next week. And Meg Springer is the manager of that program in our office. Another source of funding, I mentioned before, the Davis Project for Peace. That's $10,000 for a self-designed grassroots project to advance world peace. And that has an early deadline. So the deadline was last December for summer 2022, but you might want to think about it for summer 2023. And again, Meg Springer is the point person on that. I mentioned the Student Fellowships and Research Office. Many of their deadlines, especially for research grants, are coming right up. It's February 11th by noon. So if you're thinking about something for this summer, I would say look on their website, but also you probably want to get in and talk with either Corey Caldwell or Cindy Stocks in that office ahead of time. Because a lot of these are, it's not just you fill out an application, you kind of have to work with someone along the way to help put together a proposal. The McKean Center, their Global Citizens Fellowship, it funds projects with internationally based nonprofits or government organizations, and that deadline is February 4th. So I'd say it's probably, I'm guessing, too late for that, but Tom Ancona at the McKean Center is the one to speak to. And you may want to check out, I don't know, with travel restrictions and things, they may not be funding an international experience this summer, but there's probably more information on their website. And then Environmental Studies has a number of fellowships. I know the deadline for their non-main based ones are February 22nd by noon. So if you're interested in that, I think the person to speak with is Eileen Johnson in Environmental Studies. Also, many academic departments have funding. This is not a comprehensive list, but I do have the website down at the bottom for that. And I can also send you the slides afterwards if you want to get these websites. But I know for a fact that the classics department has funding to pay, I think it's like up to $1,000 if you want to go on an archaeological dig. German Studies has lots of opportunities on their website, and just some of the other departments listed here. But this is not a comprehensive list. So I would definitely, probably the place to start is with the academic coordinator, or check out the department's websites. A couple things I just wanted to mention too, in terms of considerations. A lot of summer opportunities are going to be unpaid, as I mentioned. And so it does require planning ahead. You also want to pay attention to any visa requirements that might exist, because you could find the internship of your dreams, but find out that you're not authorized to work in that country. So that's always something to be mindful of, and something that you need to find out. If you're going through an organized program, for example, usually those things are taken care of, but just something to think about. And then the other thing is, thinking about working abroad sounds great, but remember that you will also probably be responsible for finding a place to live abroad, and just being prepared for kind of the emotional isolation that can come with it, because I know that people experience homesickness even on study abroad programs with a group, could be from their own college, and this could be a very different experience. So I know the study abroad office has lots of resources and pre-departure programs for students going on study abroad, but it's something to think about if you're thinking of working abroad for the summer as well. And then another possibility could be, if you do a study abroad program while you're abroad, trying to volunteer or do a project that's going to give you access to meeting local potential employers, because you never know what kind of opportunity you might be able to create just from doing some informational interviews, or getting to know people who are working abroad in a community that you'd like to work in. Okay, let me just stop sharing. And I want to pull up the alumni directory. Okay. So the way that you find this is, I'm just going to talk you through it first. If you go to Handshake and click on the resources tab, and I can show you how to do that after this, and type in international, you'll get a couple of options, but one of them is International Student Resources. That's the page. And then there's a link to this International Alumni Networking List. This is something that we just created last year, so it's still a work in progress. You can see at the bottom different continents or countries with the list. So for example, this is the list for Asia. So you can see it's organized in alphabetical order by country. Obviously, it's we don't have every country listed, the city where the alum is currently living, and then the alum's name, their class year, and what it is they do. So for example, we have Dan Lowinger, who's a manager in marketing, intelligence, and effectiveness, actually at Lego. So it also tells you the sectors of expertise that they have, because sometimes you might not know what the person does, or you can just kind of scroll through this and see if any of these areas match your interests. And then we've also invited them to comment on any particular areas that they'd like to talk to students about. So for example, the second person down here worked for college counseling and education consulting company. So it tells you a little bit, sometimes tells you a little bit about what they do, their email address, where they'd like to be contacted, and then if they have a LinkedIn profile, we've listed that as well. These are all alumni who've raised their hands and said, hey, I would really like to help current students with their job search. And also on that website, you'll find 2 videos. We had 2 different alumni panels, one for alumni working in Asia and one for alumni who are in a different time zone, basically North America, Europe, and Africa. And they all had really interesting stories. For example, the alum who works for Lego in marketing, the way that he got to China was he was working for Lego in Connecticut, and an opportunity came up to move to a marketing position for a product team that was based in Denmark. So he did that for a few years. Then he decided he was going to leave Lego and go to business school. And since he was already in Europe, he decided to go to business school in France. And when he got out, he wasn't thinking about going back to Lego, but an opportunity opened up. And so he now works for Lego, and he's based in China. Another alum came to Bowdoin from India, had a number of internships throughout Asia during his time at Bowdoin. And now he works in China, and he has his own company, and he's very much in the startup space. But one thing he talked about in the video was that there's a startup visa that many countries now have, where you can apply for a visa if you say that you're thinking about starting your own company in that country. And he said, whether or not you actually do it, it lets you stay in that country for a while and kind of check out the climate. Obviously, you have to read the requirements for the visa carefully, but there, I would really suggest, before reaching out to any of the alumni, you might want to see if any of them spoke on the panel, because they really do have fascinating stories to tell. Okay, so that's the alumni directory. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you is going global. There's a short little video. It's 5 minutes basically, but I think it's worth watching because it has a lot of capabilities that students aren't always aware of. The other thing to know is if you are an international student, it also has an H-1B visa directory that you can use. And I would say if you're wondering about that and not sure kind of why that's important, you can talk to any of us advisors, but you can come see me if you want more information about using Going Global. But let me just see if I can pull up that video, and then we'll take questions. Just a minute. Wait a sec. I'll turn up the volume.
Welcome to Going Global, the competitive edge that helps job seekers get noticed and get hired. Going Global offers more than 120 country and city career guides, all developed by local employment experts and updated on a regular basis. With our new translation functionality, all of our career guides can now be viewed in more than 50 languages, making Going Global an ideal employment resource for individuals of all nationalities, seeking opportunities both at home and abroad. Each one of the country career guides feature more than 500 resources, which have been compiled by local employment specialists who know what it takes to successfully land a career in their market. Insights on the leading industries and employers, to work permit and visa regulations, and localized job application guidelines are included in the 185-page guides. Navigating within a career guide is easy. Let's start by taking a look at India. On the homepage, you'll see the full range of resources contained within the guide. All of the Going Global guides feature the same table of contents for easy comparison between locations. Each of the country career guide navigation links break out into topics and subtopics, more than 50 subjects to explore. Finding a job features expert advice for the top online job sites, telework and freelance, job fairs and career events, staffing agencies, and temporary help firms. Listings of executive search firms are a popular resource for more experienced professionals. The Finding a Job category also provides information on local nonprofits and non-governmental organizations. Hiring Opportunities covers employment trends and industry opportunities for each location. Corporate profiles for the top companies throughout the country are included. Most country guides provide extensive information for the following sectors: accounting and finance, general business, engineering and information technology, in addition to the most popular industries specific to that location. Getting the Job features location-specific advice for preparing your resume or CV, sample job application formats, and interview advice. Resume and CV examples in both the local language and English are included both for a new graduate and a more experienced professional. Cover letter guidelines and samples are also included. Interview advice provides insights on how to best prepare for the interview, how to conduct oneself during the interview according to cultural norms, and follow-up steps. Going Global's work permit and visa section is written by an immigration lawyer. Hundreds of pages of regulations have been reviewed and summarized in this section, along with links to government application forms. Professional and personal networking resources include industry-focused organizations and trade associations to help you establish and grow your professional connections. Chambers of commerce are also included, as are personal networking groups. Living there covers everything you need to know before you go. How much will it cost for housing? What are the tax implications? How much vacation time is included in a standard employment package? The cultural advice section includes insights and tips for both professional and social success. And finally, general resources features information such as embassy listings, safety and security advice, and recommended trade publications. Remember, all of the Going Global country career guides are written by local experts, kept constantly updated, and include more than 500 country-specific employment resources. Using the My Going Global feature allows you to save any or all of the career guide content to your personal account. Going Global. Jobs here, there, everywhere.